In this video, I'm going to describe how to use a class named the local connection that allows you to send messages between AIR applications running on the same local system. For this demonstration, I'll use two AIR applications named Communication Source and Communication Target, both in the Chapter 13 Begin project. If you're following along in the exercises, you can open both of these applications now. I'll start off in the Source application. The source application, also sometimes known as the sending application, needs an instance of the local connection class. You typically declare this class outside of any functions so that you can address it from anywhere in the application. Place the cursor above the existing functions inside the script section and declare a private variable named sendingCon, data typed as a local connection. At the same time, instantiate the variable using new and then a call to the local connection class's noArgumentsConstructor method. Now go down to the sendData method. In this application, there are two text input controls with IDs of fNameInput and LNameInput. When you call the sendData method, there's already a line of code there to concatenate these strings together into a single string. Now, in order to send the data from the sending application to the receiving application, call the connection object's send method. Call sendingCon.send, and the first argument you're going to pass in is a connection name. In order to communicate effectively between two AIR applications, the connection name should always start with an underscore character, and then can have any descriptive name after that. I'll name it _my_connection. The second argument that you pass in is the name of a public method of the target application that you want to call. In the communication target application, there's already a public method named displayData that's expecting a single argument, the name as a string. So that's the method that we'll call. You pass in the method name again as a string. Any other arguments that you pass in after that are considered to be arguments of the receiving method. So for example, the third argument that you pass into the send method will be the first argument received in the remote method. I'm going to pass in the value of full name, the variable that's already been created. So that's all you do in the sending application. You instantiate the local connection object, and then when you want to send the message, you call the send method. You pass in a connection name, which you should always prefix with an underscore character to indicate that you're communicating between applications with different identifiers or different domains. And then you pass in the name of the method you want to call and any other arguments that you want to pass. Now switch over to the target application. As with the sending application, declare a variable outside of any functions and data type it as a local connection object. I'll declare a variable named receivingCon, data typed as local connection, and as I did in the other application, I'll immediately initialize this object using the local connection class's noArgumentsConstructor method. Now in the init method, which is already being called upon the application complete event of the application, you're going to set up the connection to listen for messages. There are three properties to set. The first property is named client, and it's a reference to the Flash-based component that's going to receive the message. Set that value to this, that is the application itself. The next item is a call to a method named allowDomain. For AIR application communication, you should always pass in a value of a single asterisk. This is because in order for AIR applications to communicate with each other over the local connection class, you have to allow inter-domain communications. If you're working with Flex applications downloaded as web applications, the rules are a little bit different. Now call your connection object's connect method and pass in the name of the connection you're listening on. Once again, I'll use receivingCon, and now I'll call the connect method, and I'll pass in the name of the connection, which as before starts with an underscore character and then is any descriptive value. The important thing here is that the connection name in the sending and receiving applications must match exactly. Now, the sending application is saying I want to call the displayData method, and the receiving application's displayData method will receive the data, and as you can see in the code, it outputs that string to an object labeled out, which is a text area control. I'll save the changes to both applications and then run both applications. So that's it. I've set the client property, I've called the allowDomain method and passed in a wildcard asterisk, meaning anything can communicate with anything, and then I've connected using the same connection name as I set in the sending application. I'll save the changes, and I'll check my problems area to make sure there are no programming errors. I'll go back to the source application and run it. Then I'll go to the target application and run it as well. Then I'll arrange the applications on the screen so I can see both at the same time. I'll type values into first name and last name and click the Send button, and in the target or receiving application, you should see that the data is correctly received. It's also possible to send more complex data using the local connection class. I'm going to make a couple of changes to the code in both applications. In the source application, I'm going to modify the behavior so that instead of sending the full name, I'll send a complex object. I'll put in braces to indicate that I'm creating a new ActionScript object on the fly, and then I'll pass the two values individually. The first item will be named first name and will come from fnameinput.text, and the second item will be called last name and will come from lnameinput.text. I'll reformat the code so we can see it all on the screen at the same time. So now instead of sending a simple string, I'm now actually sending a complex object. Now I'll go to the target or receiving application and refactor that as well. In the display data function, I'll change the full name's data type from a string to an object. And then I'll set out.text to fullname.firstname plus a space plus fullname.lastname. I'll save the changes to both applications and run them once again. Once again, I'll arrange the applications on the screen so I can see them both. I'll click into the Sending Data application and type in a name. Click the Send Data button, and you'll see that it's received again. So you can send either simple values or complex values using the local connection class. There's one more subject to know about with the local connection class that's important. Whenever you send information from the connection class, you'll get a status event, and this event includes a level property that'll tell you whether things succeeded or not. Go back to the sending application and place the cursor above the call to the send method, and add an event listener to the sending connection object, and listen for the status event, represented by the constant status event.status. And then call the existing status handler method that's already been created in this application. Now go down to the status handler method and put in the following conditional code. If event.level equals status, and if that conditional evaluation is true, add in a trace method that outputs a message to the console that says success. Add an else clause and make a call to the trace method that outputs the string failure. Now go back to the target application and run it in standard mode, and then go back to the source application and run that application in debug mode, so that we see the trace statements from the source application but not from the target. Now click into the source application and type in a name, and click the Send Data button. And you should see, in addition to the data appearing in the target application, the trace output success. Now close the target application and try sending the data again, and this time you should see the trace message failure. So the status event will let you find out from within the sending application whether the receiving application was there, ready, and whether it received the message successfully.